Hey scrappers, if you're looking to figure out what materials you should sell this week or hold this week, now is the time to do it. Our weekly report is going to give you that information, up-to-date market news, pricing. Let's get right into it and we'll talk about it inside. Hey scrappers, Tom here from the iScrap app, and today is Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. It's 11 a.m. Eastern time, and this is live. So if you have any questions for us, please ask those questions throughout the entire video. We'll answer them. We'll get to some questions that we've been asked over the last week because, boy, do we have a lot to talk about. We have the moment that we've been waiting for. We know that Trump won the election. We know that we have a direction to go in for the next 2 to 4 years when it comes to some commodity stuff. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with a lot of these markets. You know, you have tariffs that are going to be in play. You have new electric vehicle mandates that are going to be, kind of dismantled. You're going to have more energy being produced. You're going to have the United States returning to a different place than it's been in the last couple of years. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with these markets. And I'll jump into a bunch of different things, but I'll talk briefly. The video I created last week that we posted kind of talked about what would happen. And let me tell you some of the things that I see happening. So of course, you're going to hear the T word, tariffs, really being hammered over the coming months and years. And let me tell you how I think it's going to affect some of the scrap and some of the copper prices and some of the other metal prices. Now, how the tariffs are going to be handled are going to really dictate what's going to happen to a lot of these markets and a lot of these prices. If the Chinese, for example, give us hard times, we expect these tariffs to hurt some of the copper prices. Right now, we have the copper prices at $4.09 trading level, which is down about 6.5% over the last week. Now, this is because of many factors, not just the U.S. election, not just the tariffs. One of the things is the Chinese economy is not very strong. About a month and a half ago, we talked about how the Chinese were going to put this stimulus package together. They announced it, and nothing really materialized. And since that point, we saw a quick run up when the initial stimulus was announced. Copper prices went up. And since then, we've really seen a very slow trail kind of leading its way down 40 to 50 cents over the last month and a half. It's been one of the reasons that I've said and continue to say, sell all of your coppers. Now, here we have Bear Bright prices up on the screen, but I think that these markets are unfortunately going to be going down more. I dropped my prices yesterday 10 cents. Last week, I dropped them 5 cents. And if the markets continue suit through end of day today into tomorrow, I'm probably going to be dropping prices at my yard another 5 to 10 cents per pound. So if you've been holding on to some of your coppers and brasses, hoping that the markets were going to kind of go to new highs, that doesn't look like it's going to be happening for the balance of this year. We have 2 months of the Biden administration outgoing, the transfer come in with the Trump administration, and you have very different perspectives when it comes to these two administrations and what they're prioritizing. So when I look at copper prices, I'm looking at some of these news pieces. Article I read on oil price. The Trump administration may redirect funding away from renewable energy projects, impacting the demand for metals like steel, copper, nickel, and cobalt. That's going to directly hit the scrap prices because a lot of that renewable energy, what have we talked about? Solar, electric vehicles, they need copper to go into them. But if we're going to divert money away from renewables and more towards fossil fuels, you could talk about the wall amongst other things. What we're going to start to see happening is that commodities are going to be needed, but the heightened value that they've had is going to be diminished in the short term. Long-term copper prices are going to continue to rise, but you're going to see a 6 to 12-month period starting now where it's going to take a little while for things to settle, for the dust to settle from the election, for the new administration to come in, for executive actions and laws and all types of things to happen. I expect in May of 2025, that gives us 4 months of the new administration to really start to see where the markets are going to be going. I don't see a huge increase in demand. I think a lot of countries around the world are really going to be waiting to see what happens with Trump, to see what happens with the administration, to see what direction they go in, to see what the Chinese are going to be doing, because they're going to be on notice for the tariffs, for pricing decreases, for their own country going through a little bit of an economic pullback. Now, things that are going to help us, interest rates are going to slowly come down. We heard another reduction last week. We expect one more this year and then some more happening in 2025. So that's going to make borrowing money less expensive, which is a good thing. But are we going to see projects happening post-election? I don't know. We're going to really have to wait and see some of these things here for a while. While many people are very happy with the election results, obviously the popular vote and all those other things, how it affects commodities, sometimes it's a little drawn out, and that may be what we unfortunately see in the coming months. Other things we want to talk about, steel prices. I think that steel prices have really bottomed their way out. Last week, I saw a brief dip followed by the exact dip being reversed a matter of days later. Steel prices are continuing to be in the doldrums, and I don't really expect to see large increases. Many people are going to say, well, Trump's going to build the wall. You need steel for that. Yeah, you do. But we need thousands and thousands of tons of steel to really see things happening. One disparaging piece of news that I saw was Saudi Arabia. We talked about this a few weeks ago. They talked about creating this kind of city out of skyscrapers in the middle of the desert. It was originally supposed to be miles and miles long. That's now been shortened to like a mile and a half. And the CEO of that project walked away. And that was one of the bright spots that I saw, where they were going to need a massive amount of steel to really build that infrastructure out. So that unfortunately was a bit of a bad news, and that's going to hurt the steel markets. And that's why I continue to tell you, move your steel out as quickly as it hits your truck, your trailer, or your dumpster. I am continuing to spin my metal every 1 to 2 days. Every steel yard that I know is doing the same thing. So if that doesn't tell you something, I'm not sure what would. But what we are seeing is a dipping in these pricing, really kind of a stabilization, but you're not going to see large growth. You're going to see a few dollars per ton increase or decrease. But for the next few months, I expect that to happen. Even with energy costs decreasing, transportation will come down. That will start to raise some of the prices, but I don't expect to see that until the end of the first quarter, maybe the beginning of the second quarter in 2025. Other things that I've heard that kind of go along steel with some of the tariffs from Reuters, existing tariffs on metals such as steel and aluminum are already impacting global trade dynamics, particularly through transshipment restrictions. What does that mean? Where is the metal? Where is it moving? How is it moving? How are the tariffs going to affect the steel prices from countries like India that want to sell steel back into the US? What tariff is going to be levied on a country like that if they don't have reciprocity if it comes to trading? So there's going to be things that happen, and we're going to see a lot of changes in the coming months. Some people have mentioned in the past, well, the wars that are going on are going to really spur a lot of metal use. Not really, especially as they're talking about, trying to end these conflicts overseas. And that may, you may need metal to rebuild some of these countries. I know that the problems in the Middle East and the problem in Ukraine, there's a lot of buildings that have been destroyed and are going to have to be rebuilt. But even if the wars stopped today, you're talking 6 to 12 months before the cleanup efforts are really even shifting into strong mode. I was reading yesterday about the Ukrainian power plants and how they're having such a hard time finding parts because the Russians have just destroyed their infrastructure, especially their energy infrastructure. That's going to hurt the rebuilding of the country. They're going to focus more on the power plants being rebuilt than they are the buildings, because you can't put people in buildings without power being run to them. So it's going to be one of those funny time periods for 6 to 12 months that's really going to be tough to gauge where things are. Things that I can gauge: nickel prices and stainless steel continuing to be in the doldrums. Nickel prices are still near or at 52-week lows, and that doesn't bode very well for stainless steel. So unfortunately, I just don't see much of a growth coming in that market, and that really is going to be on a wait and see mode for the next few months. 304 stainless prices are only 28 to 38 cents per pound, and I just don't see large increases coming, especially with the holidays. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. It's a time of the year where things just slow down. Trading slows down. Massive growth is not happening until the first quarter. So it's just going to be one of those things that we continue to watch and see. Got a question? Sure. Let's bring it up. Sean says, computer and TV ribbon wire connects boards together and such, has silver and gold ends. What would that be classified as? So it depends on the gold, Sean. The ribbon wire generally could be between a computer wire and a normal insulated wire. It could have a percentage of like 30 to 40%. Now, if there's gold connectors on it and you're cutting those off, how are you going to sell them? Some scrap yards are going to say, well, we buy that as a copper bearing material. Gold refiners are certainly not going to buy those ends. So it makes it really difficult to refine those things. Even with gold prices still over 2,600 an ounce, I just don't see a lot of upside on it. So, you might want to check with a couple of different yards if they would buy it. Me personally, if you came to my yard with a box full of ends that had gold pins on them, I don't even know how many ounces of gold there are. You might have a 50-pound box. There's plastics, there's coppers, there could be aluminums or brasses underneath. So it's hard to really gauge what's going to happen with those gold-plated pieces. But Sean, thank you for taking the question, or thank you for sending the question over. Other things, we had a topic of the week topic. Many different news outlets are discussing the future tariffs and their ramifications for the scrap industry. What does Tom expect to see down the pipeline when it comes to the Republican tariff policy? Well, unfortunately, in the short run, I think that it's going to hurt some of the prices. The Chinese have been very combative when it comes to a lot of these different markets. While they've given us pushback on tariffs, I think it's going to be even more so. We're going to have to see what type of U.S. diplomacy happens, what type of reciprocity happens when it comes to these tariffs, because if the Chinese are going to get hammered with more tariffs, is that going to hurt the U.S. consumer? Are they going to be built in such a way where they're able to start buying more goods from our farmers and from our own manufacturing? I don't know. I'm already starting to see companies moving out of China because of the tariffs. I read about a shoe company the other day that's starting to move their production out of China the day after the election. They announced this. So, that just shows you that they're expecting money to be taken from them because of these tariffs, eating into their bottom line, or they then have to charge more money for their goods, and that could turn consumers off in the U.S. So that's going to hurt. I know shoes are not scrap, but it kind of illustrates the point. So it's going to be, what happens with a lot of these countries? How is Mexico going to respond? How is China going to respond? How are overseas countries like Europe going to respond? We don't have some of those. We have another question.
Yeah, a related question.
Sure.
Will the future of e-waste be affected?
So Merchant Metal said, will the future of e-waste be affected? I do believe it will. If you remember a few years ago, China said we're no longer buying low-grade copper wire. What happened? Lower grades of copper wire went down in price even as copper didn't fall. So the Chinese said, we're not buying this stuff anymore, and it had to go to other countries, Malaysia, South Korea. So e-waste is going to be similar. The Chinese stopped purchasing a lot of that garbage e-waste a few years ago. It's going to become more expensive to recycle that e-waste in the United States. Why? Because we have actual laws and guidelines that put us in a position to follow things so we're not polluting the environment. So as more lithium ion based battery items come off of consumers and into the recycling market, those are expensive to recycle. They have systems set up, but they're not like throw it in a pot and have it melt. And we've talked about this in the past. So I do think that e-waste is going to be affected. But if you're looking to get some quotes on any type of e-waste, the team over at rockawayrecycling.com, we have all types of e-waste quotes for memory and CPU chips. So please check some of those things out. We've even made some videos recently talking about how to upgrade your Rambus motherboards and memory chips. Overall, we had one more question that I'll talk about. What's the current state of lead acid batteries? With new policy changes, could these make a comeback? I'm going to say yes, we could start to see some of the lead acid prices increasing. I expect to see more hybrid vehicles, and I also expect to see the catalytic converter prices increasing in the next 12 to 16 months, not in the next 4 to 6 months. But as the EV mandates get peeled back, as companies in the US get promoted more and as they start to sell their vehicles, they want to be able to curb emissions. More catalytic converter material needs to be in there. If that happens, then we're going to start to see platinum, palladium, and rhodium rising. But in the meantime, we've seen catalytic converter prices take a bit of a back seat in the last 7 days post-election. And that's because we've seen more money flowing into stocks, AI-based stocks. I mean, cryptocurrency. I'm not a Bitcoin guy, but it hit $92,000 a Bitcoin today for an all-time record high. So we're seeing money moving from commodities where they were the last few months, kind of that safe haven, more into growth mode with stocks and things like that. So those are going to be changes that happen over the coming weeks and months. We'll continue to talk about those week to week. Don't forget, check out our YouTube page. Ask us questions. We do these reports every week. So ask us questions. We'll get to those answers during the weekly reports, or we'll respond to them on YouTube or any of the other socials that we're on. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you can continue to get these YouTube updates and videos. My name is Tom from the iScrap app. Today is Wednesday, November 13th. Until next week, I'll scrap you later.
Thanks for watching our video. For $2.99 a month, by becoming a member, you can get access to early videos, member-only videos, merchandise discounts from our store, and priority comments that we answer before answering any other scrappers. Click the link below to learn more. Until next time, scrap you later.